How does being in a parody death metal band help launch a tech career? Stick around to find out. What's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, nedinthecloud.com. Today, we are going to do something a little bit different with the Terraform Tuesday video. I gave a presentation for HashiConf 2024 back in February, and it was all about the skills I picked up outside of tech that helped me in my tech career. I thought you might enjoy it, so without further ado, take it away. Me? All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. I'm Ned Bellavance, and thank you for attending HashiTalks. It would appear that I've been slotted into the dinner time block for HashiTalks, which is a bit on the nose, as I'm sure you'll see soon for reasons. But you know what? I'll take it. Originally, I thought I was the very last presentation. I was like, are they trying to hide me? But no, I was the last presentation of a block. So that's fine. I'm down with that. Anyway, usually my talks are about some deep technical topic in the world of like Vault or Terraform or something equally nerdy. Like last year, I presented at HashiTalks about auto-scaling boundary with worker nodes. And at HashiConf last year, I talked about using Python to validate Vault policies. And in case you couldn't tell from the title of this talk, this is not a technical deep dive, unless we're talking about technical death metal, in which case, we could do that. We got time. But if there's two things that I absolutely loved as a kid, it was computers and Weird Al Yankovich. And maybe that's an apt metaphor for my personality. I've always been like a 50-50 mix of extrovert and introvert. Honestly, I can be equally comfortable sitting in a corner for hours writing code or standing on a stage screaming into a rubber chicken. I like logic and process. I also like humor and chaos. Those are traits that I brought forward with me on my career journey. And it helped me in my time working help desk, consulting on the cloud, and now creating educational content for technical people like yourself. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. So first, we have to talk about the rubber chickens and the altar of doom. I've always been a misfit of sorts. And one of the places that I found like-minded people who accepted me was in the heavy metal and hardcore scenes. These communities are filled to the brim with people who feel left out or rejected or just kind of a bad fit for normal society. At their best, they're also welcoming to newcomers. They're fiercely protective of each other and supportive to those who are in need. There's countless songs that talk about found family and the importance of the scene and the community. The band H2O, it's a hardcore band, they have a song called The 5-Year Plan, and it has a lyric that goes, "My friends look out for me like family." And I have to say it that way because that's how they sing it. And if you've ever been to one of their shows, the whole crowd screams along. And it's really hard to describe the experience that you have of belonging and shared community with everyone there. Now, I'm not going to say that it's all rainbows and unicorns, or maybe graves and skeletons would be more apt. But when you're a teenager looking for somewhere to belong, you could do a lot worse. That community thing is important, so don't forget about that. On the other hand, hardcore and metal people can take themselves like a little too seriously. Like really, look at those gauntlets. Look at the spikes on those gauntlets. Maybe he knows it's funny. I really can't tell, but how could you not laugh like at least a little? And personally, I'm not one to take myself all that seriously, in case you hadn't already noticed. So it was on a sunny day in mid-April of 1995 that me and my best friend Evan hatched the idea for a parody death metal band. We would take our shared love of Weird Al. We both grew up making our own parody songs in the theme of Weird Al. Morbid Angel and bands like it. Morbid Angel is a death metal band for those who are not familiar. And Gallagher. Yes, the watermelon guy. But like before he got all weird, this was way before that. And we would mash them all together into a band that we would call Morbid Entree. Our original 3-song demo was entitled The Ruptured Colon EP, and it had such bangers as Pluckin' the Chicken, Sandwich of Death, and Plastic Aluminum Cadaver. It's a microwave dinner. You get it because it's a cadaver, plastic, and anyway. So we came up with ridiculous stage names like Vocular Gastric Juices, that was me, Processed Cheese Grinder, the guitarist in the Crazy Hood, and Demonic Bean Recycler, that's my buddy in the middle. And yeah, you didn't want to be around him after he had a few Taco Bell burritos. Trust me on that. Our first show was my buddy Mike's graduation party, and we did stuff like throw American cheese slices at the crowd, smash oranges and watermelons, and probably did something unspeakable with grape jelly. I mean, honestly, it was a long time ago and I can't remember all of it, but apparently we also had a real distaste for wearing shirts. So that was a thing, and I'm sorry. Although the band only stayed together for a few years, during that time we released another EP, 2 full lengths, and played a ton of local shows and marketed ourselves out to the burgeoning tape trading scene. So why am I telling you all of this? Aside from the fact that I find it intensely amusing, 30 years later, it still kind of tickles me a little bit. But it's also because the skills and lessons I learned from being in a band and being involved in the hardcore and metal scene have had reverberations throughout my career. And if you don't mind, I'd like to highlight a few. A crash course in everything is what I was in for. Um, Back in the early days, we had an ethos that was called DIY, and that really came up through the punk scene. And it had a lot to do with the fact that we had neither the money nor the resources to hire or pay people to do stuff for us, like make tapes, record us, etc. And so you had to do everything yourself. That was the very definition of DIY. Now, kids these days with your garage bands, what slide am I on? There we go. With your garage bands and your sequencers and your digital audio workstations, we didn't have any of that crap. In my day, we had a 4-track reel-to-reel that we found in my good friend's basement. That's not an embellishment. That's not the actual 4-track recorder, but it looked almost exactly like that. And our earliest recordings were literally a mic hanging in the middle of the room going into a tape deck. But eventually we upgraded to a Mackie 8-track mixer plugged into this old 4-track reel-to-reel. And eventually we mixed it down to a tape of some kind. There were no audio engineers, no YouTube primers teaching you the ins and outs of how to record good audio, and no easy way to do these vast 32-track multi-track recordings. We had to teach ourselves how to record our music. We had to teach ourselves how to set up a PA for live shows, how to properly mic a guitar amp and not get a ton of feedback, or maybe some feedback, because sometimes that's good, how to properly record my ridiculous yelling, and how to mix it all down to a cassette. Now, I didn't do all of that myself, but I did learn enough to know what the gear does and how it works. Years later, when I became a semi-professional podcaster, that audio know-how paid dividends. Not only was I able to properly set up the audio gear in the studio, but I also understood some of the basics of recording and producing. I was no stranger to editing audio, and I'm proud to say that even my very early podcasting efforts, they sound pretty good. I used panning and stereo sound to separate out the guests and create sort of a headspace. I was able to do things like remove background noise, use a de-esser for speech, and even filter out plosives. And if you don't know what a plosive is, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I only do because of the time I spent in recording studios as a youth learning about all this stuff. In addition to helping with Morbid Entree, in addition to helping with the recording process, I was also helping out with Morbid Entree's merch and marketing. And I also got involved with several other bands in terms of merch and marketing. I helped design a website for a ska band in the year 2000, which sadly I cannot find that website. I've tried. But I do have a copy of the band that I was in. And this is a website that I designed in 2001 using Dreamweaver and dynamic HTML. Now, listen, this was 2001. And just because I learned Dreamweaver and HTML, it didn't mean I was actually great at any of it. But again, this is 2001. So the web looked a little bit different back then. It was, well, honestly, it was a whole lot uglier. I helped to create CD and tape jewel case layouts. And in the process, I forced myself to learn Photoshop and basic graphic design. As someone who now has to create video thumbnails, architecture diagrams for my consulting practice, and PowerPoint presentations like this on a regular basis, having those skills in my back pocket has been indispensable. And that's particularly true as I've taken on the role of a plural site author, something I started doing about 7 years ago now. Geez. All I have in my Pluralsight courses are my visuals and my voice to help guide folks through technical topics. The combination of some basic graphic design and combined with some audio production chops has really helped my courses communicate effectively. And I have to say, much like IT ops, the best audio and visual production is the kind that you don't notice. It fades into the background and you can just focus on the thing, whether it's music or learning about Terraform. In addition to all of that, the shows we played, they don't just come to you. No one calls you and is like, hey, I hear you got a band. Would you like to come play at this venue? So as a band, we had to work to find venues who would host us and promote the shows when we were on the bill. Some of those places actually required the bands to sell tickets as a way to guarantee booking. So we had to sell not just to our friends, but to the larger scene. So we'd actually get enough people there that we'd get asked back for another show. Also, we had to clean up after ourselves. It was very messy. I mentioned the Gallagher thing, right? Anyway, so after I stopped playing in Morbid Entree, I still got to help other bands with their shows and promotion. And in that process, I learned about marketing, promoting yourself, selling tickets, and selling merch at the merch table. As I moved into my technology career, whether I was a consultant selling services, an engineer trying to sell an idea, or a self-employed person promoting themselves, please like and subscribe. The things I learned from being in a band and helping others do the same proved its worth many times over. There's two interesting sides to being in a band. On the one hand, you spend a lot of time cooped up with your bandmates, writing and practicing songs. It's a kind of lonely endeavor, and it can occasionally get cantankerous and ornery. We spent many hours in my friend's basement practicing, refining, trying to create songs. Sometimes you all agreed on where a song should be going, what the next part should be, and sometimes you didn't, very angrily at each other. And that's probably why more than one band has ended up breaking up in the studio. There's a lot of challenges there. On the other hand, you and your bandmates then get up on a stage and play to a group of people in a very public venue. You have to perform the thing that you've been practicing and working so hard on. And that's the kind of dichotomy that can help you as an engineer, especially as you move into a more senior role. Writing code or building out infrastructure requires both intense concentration and creativity. And as you move to bigger projects, it also forces you to collaborate with a larger team. Problems will arise. Requirements need to be met. You're going to have disagreements with your team on the best way to approach a particular problem. You have to engage in creative, collective problem solving, the same kinds of things that you might do when writing music. At the end of the day, you want an elegant and satisfying solution. And if you think I'm going to draw a parallel to songwriting like I just did, that's because I totally did and I am. Writing a song is a deeply creative and often collaborative process, and polishing that song to the point where you're ready to perform it in front of others requires dedication and concentration and practice and practice and practice. There's a lot of practice, is what I'm saying. For me, writing code, writing prose, and writing a song all scratch the same creative itch. As you move up in your career, there will be many times where you need to collaborate with others to get a project off the ground. And because I honed these skills in a collaborative creative process in songwriting, I felt very comfortable when I encountered those same situations in my professional life. Beyond that, once you have a solution and you're ready to deploy your code or architecture into production, that's a bit like playing your song live. It's going to be chaotic and unpredictable. And no matter how much you planned and prepared, things are still going to go awry. You have to roll with the punches, find creative solutions on the spot, and manage the expectations of the audience. There was one time where my guitarist, Evan, his amp, it just stopped working. We didn't know why, in the middle of a song, of course. And so I had to entertain and keep the crowd engaged for a few minutes while he did some troubleshooting, determined that his amp unfortunately had died, and we had to borrow an amp from another band to finish our set. We came up with a solution to the problem, and during that time, we had to keep our cool and keep the audience engaged until we could fix the problem. And if you've ever been through a data center outage or an application being down during a rollout, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You have to manage the expectations of the customers, clients, or whoever is watching, and at the same time, find a solution to the problem as quickly as possible. And the same goes for giving presentations to clients or the wonderful, amazing folks like yourselves. Like and subscribe. The stage is different, but and the audience is different, but the feeling and the challenges of doing something live in front of people, that is very much the same. The next facet I want to talk about is looking for community. I think the reason I glommed onto the hardcore and metal scene was because I felt welcome and accepted by that scene. I've never been much for sports. Shocking, I know. I'll give you a moment. I've always been a little too nerdy and awkward for the popular kids. Even the skater kids were pretty hostile, probably because I couldn't ollie to save my life. But metal and hardcore kids, as Nirvana once said, come as you are. And they did. And I did. And they accepted me no matter how kind of weird I was. I'll never forget what my friend Evan's mom said after chatting with Mark, the lead singer of the metal band Insanity, at a show. She said, "He's just one of the nicest people I've ever met." And that was true of him and others that I met in the scene time and time again. Despite the outward appearance of aggression and anger, some of the kindest and most accepting people I've ever met come from the metal scene. And it's something I've carried with me as I moved into other communities. One of the first rules of the mosh pit, I know it looks, for anybody who's never been in it, like a bunch of people swinging wildly and throwing themselves into each other and just absolute chaos. And to a certain degree, that's true. But also, the first rule of the pit is if someone falls down, you pick them up. If someone is hurt, you get them out. You look out for each other. And even though you're all there dancing and being somewhat aggressive, everyone's there to have a good time and to look out and help each other. And I've taken those lessons with me as I moved into other communities to invite people in, especially if they look like they don't belong, to show kindness and understanding to each other, to acknowledge that we're all on this journey together, and to know that this isn't a zero sum game. If you join the community, the metal community, and you're wildly successful as a band, that's just more awesome music for me to listen to. When you succeed, we all win. And I like to take that same approach as I've moved into other communities. To see others be successful is a reflection on the support that they got from the community. And it's wonderful to see them grow and develop. And that's a lesson that I think is broadly applicable no matter what community you're in. Okay. That was a little maudlin. I'll admit it. So let's rein it in here, folks. What is my point? Do I think you should all go start your own death metal parody bands and start touring the country? Well, that would be amazing. But no, no. The broader lesson I want to draw from all of this gets back to the title of my talk. Everything is useful. At first blush, you wouldn't think that being in a ridiculous food related death metal band would help me in any way in my professional career. When you say it out loud, it's preposterous on its own face. And yet, it did profoundly. And it wasn't just the band, but all the skills I acquired by following my passions and trying out new things, not being afraid to experiment, knowing that I was going to fail. I mean, Morbid Entree didn't work out. We broke up after 3 years, but I tried something and it was interesting. I didn't pursue these things with an expectation of a future payout. 17-year-old me was definitely not thinking about how this stupid idea for a band would turn into a talk that I give virtually at a 24-hour event called HashiTalks on the internet. In fact, you would have to explain a lot to 17-year-old me to even understand that premise. Like, for starters, what the heck is a live stream? And what is a HashiTalk? Or even more likely, what's the internet? And I'm only kind of joking there, but not really. Every single one of you watching and listening has had a life full of interesting experiences. Whether intentional or not, you've gathered a unique skill set that no one else has. When people talk about bringing your whole self to the job, I think this is what they mean, or at least this is what I hope they mean. It's recognizing the skills and knowledge you've picked up outside of your current job and in your past. You can take those things and apply them to the challenges that you face today and tomorrow. Maybe you were a finalist in a national spelling bee, or let's say you have a fine arts degree in ceramics. My friend Chrissy does, and she doesn't work in ceramics, to tell you that much. Or you spent all of college deeply immersed in the game of snooker. I'm sure that would help in some way. I've been running a podcast called Day 2 Cloud for over 4 years now, which when I say it out loud is, wow, it has been that long. Anyway, in that time, I have met a wide variety of folks from non-traditional backgrounds that have landed in tech. One of them was a former Marine who then became a chef and then somehow dropped into the world of technology. And some of you know exactly who I'm talking about. Hi, Tim. I also know a librarian who somehow fell into InfoSec, or an elementary school teacher who struggled to find a permanent position and now they write Go for a tech startup. The experiences that you have before you got into the world of tech matter. And you can bring all of that to bear in your current position and anywhere that your career might take you in the future. I don't want to get depressing here, but it's just a reality of last year and this year that there have been a lot of layoffs in 2023 and 2024, and I don't think we're done. I know a lot of you may be looking for a job, or you're concerned about your current employment status. You're worried you're going to get that pink slip tomorrow. And you're going to get a lot of advice on how to craft your resume, how to get through a tech interview, how to do a code challenge. Those are all valuable. But I think the best advice I can give is to take a few moments and reflect on yourself. What makes you unique? What strange skill do you bring to the table? What story can you tell a potential employer about yourself? That's the hook. And then you just have to reel them in. Now, of course, you still have to get through the gauntlet of getting your resume in front of a hiring manager and getting that first interview. But in an interview, you'll often be asked a question. And the person who's interviewing you is less interested in the technically correct answer. What they're really asking you to do is tell them a story. For instance, you'll get a question like, tell me about a time that you broke production, or tell me about this technology and how you used it. Do they really care about the technology? Eh. What they really care about is the story that you have to tell about yourself. And so, my best advice to you is think about yourself, think about your experiences. What is your story? What is the thing that's going to stick in that hiring manager's head? And when they go to look through the candidates again, go, you know, even if they don't have the most experience, maybe I've got 50 candidates in front of me. This one person stuck out because they played snooker in college or they're a ceramics major or whatever it is, whatever that unique thing is. That's the thing that's going to maybe get you the job. But even more importantly, I think it's something that's going to help you in your career for years moving forward because everything that you've learned, all of your experiences are useful. My story is that I was in a joke death metal band and it has given me unexpected skills that I use every day. Dang, I kind of ended on another maudlin note, didn't I? Uh, what can I say? I have a flair for the dramatic. I suppose there's nothing left to do but wind down this talk, fair warning to the MCs, with a reading from my favorite recording artist of all time. You can be a coffee achiever. You can sit around the house and watch Leave It to Beaver. The future's up to you. So what you gonna do? Dare to be stupid. Dare to be stupid. Thanks, everyone. I'm Ned Bellavance. Like and subscribe, all those kinds of things. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or in person if you happen to see me at the next HashiConf, which is in Boston, Massachusetts. Hope to see you there. You can find my website, nedinthecloud.com. Don't be a stranger. And thank you to everyone at HashiCorp and the community for putting on this amazing event. HashiTalks is awesome. I love that we have the ASL folks doing the interpretation live, which is amazing. And I have to say, this has been a fantastic experience. So thank you, everybody, for putting this on. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe out there. Bye. I hope you enjoyed my presentation for HashiConf. I'm sure you have questions, comments, and other ideas. Feel free to leave them down below. Until next time, keep calm and terraform on. Eating, dancing, glorious.